to Anfield, and two of the boys on the table were at the game yesterday, and a special performance by Liverpool, and a special day as well.
It was stunning by Liverpool. I mean, I was at the 6-3 hammering that Arsenal took at Manchester City, and this was a much more complete sort of devastation of Arsenal. I mean, Arsenal were in that game. On this occasion, they were blown away in 20 minutes. And I felt what Brendan Rodgers did very well was expose the weaknesses in the Arsenal team. I mean, he played Luis Suarez, his most sort of devastating player, against their weak link, Monreal. He had Sterling on the other wing to cut inside and use his pace against Mertesacker. He hounded Arsenal in possession. Arteta looked slow in possession. Wilshere struggled yesterday. It was a very, very complete performance by Liverpool, and although Brendan Rodgers afterwards was trying to play down their title hopes, I think you could only conclude after a game like that they are very much in the title. I just wondered from a Liverpool point of view whether this might be a moment where that transfer window when they didn't sign anyone will be regretted, because what you saw yesterday was a team that, with a bit more depth to them, you know, if you weren't a little bit worried about them sustaining injuries, might, you know, really be in that title race, albeit as a bit of an outsider, but devastating on the day, capable of beating anybody on the day. And that was probably, along with Man City's 4-1 against United, the performance of the season. Why
are Arsenal so vulnerable in some of these big matches, John? Because you mentioned the Manchester City game when they lost 6-3, and this time they've conceded 5 at Anfield.
Yeah, I mean, we've been writing about Arsenal and their defending for several years, you know, in this sort of trophyless stretch, and that being one of their reasons. I actually think that they've got a reasonable back four at the moment, albeit not when Monreal plays, but if you put Kieran Gibbs in there, it's not bad. The centre-halves have done well together. I think they do have a problem with defending, but it's more as a team. There's too many players on that side that I don't quite want to call them luxury players, but they don't like defending. No, Ozil, you know, he's got other gifts. He doesn't defend. Santi Cazorla, fabulous player, not a guy that likes to defend. Even Olivier Giroud didn't really offer them any kind of physical presence or outlet yesterday, despite his stature. And I think in modern football, you've got to defend as a team, you've got to attack as a team, but you can't have even more than one player who's not going to track back and defend. And the difference between the way Liverpool pressed right from the front, the whole team was covering the pitch, had energy, and the sort of slowness of Arsenal, and, you know, they only wanted to play when they had the ball, and I think that might be their Achilles heel.
What did you make of Wenger after the game? Because he said that the best performance came from, in terms of Arsenal, came from their supporters, some of whom walked out after about 20 minutes yesterday, apparently. But what did you make of Wenger after the game, his own reaction?
He looked very ashen-faced. He looked quite crestfallen to me. And it was interesting also that he took some of the blame himself. He said that no one's performance was good enough, including myself. I think it's slightly unusual for him to sort of beat himself up a little bit like that. He made the right point, saying, obviously, you know, it's where they go from here. When they lost to Manchester City, they went on a very, very good run. They'll have to go again. This Manchester United game on Wednesday is intriguing, obviously, because, you know, it's a great opportunity for Manchester United to try and get a result down at the Emirates, but also for Arsenal to get themselves back on track. I thought he looked very deflated yesterday. He looked really deflated, and also he didn't really move very much from the bench. You know, he wasn't up doing things. He talked about how he could have taken anyone off at half-time. Well, he didn't take anyone off at half-time. He made all his changes after an hour. And, you know, it was a very strange performance, because I thought Arsenal tried to play themselves into a game where they really had to hit their straps straight away. And Liverpool just got at them, and Arsenal just wanted to play at their own pace, and Liverpool wouldn't let them do that.
What I found curious as well was he said this was like our game against Man City, early kick-off, you know, Saturday morning. Well, why not sort of warn the players about that before?
To be fair, that Man City game, they came straight off the back of a Champions League match. They didn't do that this time. They should have been better prepared, and they didn't look, to me, as if they were ready for it.
We'll come on to your story about Mertesacker and Yaya Sanogo in a moment. But Martin, is this result, this performance, this defeat, the moment that we've been waiting for all season with this Arsenal team?
Well, if it continues over the next 6 weeks, it will be the beginning of that. The thing that you've got to say about Arsenal all season is that they have been absolutely outstanding at putting the weaker teams away. Very few draws all season. It's, you know, it's a few defeats, but basically they've won virtually every game, which allows them to have the occasional setback because their response has been sensational. If they win on Wednesday, this gets forgotten straight away, because they're going to be at worst second, potentially top, if Chelsea don't win at West Brom, and it gets lost. If they were to drop points again, that would be points dropped in 3 out of the last 4 games, and suddenly it looks like it's all unravelling, with Bayern Munich looming on the horizon, potentially you know, without question, a tough game against Liverpool in the FA Cup next week as well, and you can suddenly start to see the swirling doubt around the club, particularly around the fans, because clearly their inability to get somebody in who's fit enough to play at any point in the transfer window is going to cause frustration and anger. We've seen that already in the last week or so. So there is an issue. I wouldn't discount them because they have been so good at putting teams away. But I would say that Liverpool, given they've got City and Chelsea to both come to Anfield, where they are absolutely relentless at the moment. I saw them against Everton the other week. They killed them. They really did. They are making themselves into genuine contenders, which I don't think even Brendan Rodgers would have expected. I don't quite think they're good enough to win the league, but you can't dismiss them as you might have done in August.
What's missing, Martin? If they can't win the league, what is it? Just the strength in depth of the squad?
It's bodies. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the team that played, they've not been helped by injuries. They've lost Johnston, who they could do with him back, even though he's not had a great season because he's still a very good player. Centre half, Aga's been missing. They've been trying to find a left back all season. I mean, Sissoko's not really a left back; he's just playing there. And because they've got nobody else, because Enrique's injured and Kelly's been struggling for fitness, you could have maybe gone right to play Johnson, all those sort of things. And in midfield, what else have they got? They've got Joe Allen, and they've got players like Aspas and Luis Alberto, who haven't really done enough yet. And Moses, who's not really... But the way they play is absolutely bewitching at times, isn't it? The two up front are fantastic. Coutinho, he may have the odd poor game, but when he's having a good game like yesterday, he looks like a really top-class player. I mean,
I think Gerrard's been quite key as well, the way he's taken to this new role. I mean, he played incredibly deep at times yesterday, but he won so many interceptions, didn't he? He was winning the ball back. At the moment where there was maybe a little chance that Arsenal might get back into it, a little bit when they were 2 down, you think, well, if they get something now, maybe they are back into it. He was the one who was winning the ball back all the time. He was almost playing as an auxiliary centre-half at times, and he never let Arsenal get anywhere near the goal.
Yeah. And what's different about him to other sitting midfielders is he can get the ball and he can spray 60 yards, which gives them something.
I mean, good for England if he can actually adapt into that over the next few months. I mean, because England needs someone to actually do that well, don't they?
Perhaps they'll have a new role. How was Brendan afterwards? Was he measured with his response? It's obviously an emphatic victory, and he'll be pleased with it. They've got them again. They play Arsenal again in the FA Cup 5th round next weekend.
Well, he was really trying to play things down, and you know, he was sort of almost deflated himself. It was strange. He was definitely proud. But he talked about progress. He talked about improvements. I mean, he wanted 3 players in the transfer window. And I think just because of yesterday's performance, he wouldn't have stopped seeing the sort of weaknesses in terms of bodies in the squad, and I think that's why he's being cautious. But you know, I think what delighted him particularly was Raheem Sterling, and what really impresses me about Rodgers is the way he improves players and his passion for improving players, and that was the biggest thing he seems to be taken out of the situation at the moment. Sterling, Henderson's improvement, and he's focused very much on that. And you know, if you focus on that,
Coutinho as well.
Coutinho, yeah.
You mentioned the 3 players that you wanted in the transfer window, but if in the next transfer window over the summer, it's performances like this, results like this, that presumably John W. Henry, the owner of the club, will back Rodgers, or this will give him a better chance to back him.
I think it helps his cause because, from what I understand, there's a slight difference of opinion between what Brendan Rodgers has been wanting and the transfer committee have wanted, which is they wanted to keep looking for bargains, your sort of £8 million Coutinhos who might be stars.
Have we ever actually established who is on that committee?
I think there's 4 of them, but I forget their names.
Okay.
Barry Hunter and
the Scouts on it. I think Ian is on it. Rodgers on it himself. Obviously.
Dave Fallows.
Yeah. So I think, and I think he's not chairing the committee. Rodgers, he's part of the committee. I mean, he's been very clear that he doesn't want any sort of sense that there's a dispute between him and the transfer policy. No. But I think there is certainly a frustration. I think that's quite evident.
I think he thinks Liverpool are at a stage of their development where they can sign, you know, top players that are going to take them on. So cannot play Anko is the kind of profile of player he wants. And I think a performance like that and a good end to the season will aid his argument. He can go back to them and say, look, we're a bit further on than signing £8 million players. We now need the more senior bodies that can really give us a push.
Well, if they are top 4, then suddenly they're a much more appealing club for players as well, because that's what the problem they've had is, as attracting players, is that, because the history of the club and all of that and what it's done and the size of the club has been negated by the inability to offer the sort of football that most players want to play. Now, if that's on offer as well,
Well, what's interesting is when you start getting to that level, though, you're then fishing in a much smaller pool of talent against really big hitters who are going to blow you out of the water, as Chelsea did with the Salah deal, didn't they? They just went in there and said, right, that's it, we're doing it, bang, it's done. So Liverpool have got to act smarter, they've got to be quicker, and I think that's the frustration with the transfer committee is, are they getting in there and getting these deals done quickly?
Players, haven't they? And then
you don't try and do the Konoplyanka deal in 72 hours at the end of a transfer window with a Ukrainian club owned by a billionaire. It just doesn't happen. It's just not going to happen. It's just so, and that's why the Salah deal was the one I think that's really killed them a little bit.
I think they're also doing a few things with wages, aren't they? Because they've put Suarez now onto proper stellar money, and that's a signal of intent. But they're also trying to get rid of a few, or get someone like Glenn Johnson to reduce his wages to sort of free up some.
And also, if you are bringing in younger players, you can have them on a lower wage with the incentive of becoming a much bigger, higher earner.